RotoGrinders Today. I'm George Cooper, a.k.a. BlenderHD, BlenderHD. You're going to follow me on Twitter. And it's Thursday, August 1st. We'll be taking a look at the small 5-game MLB DFS slate on DraftKings. They may not even be 5 games. We'll see about that. Hit that thumbs up button on your way in the door. You know how much I like the thummy thumbs. Hit that thumbs up button. Hit the subscribe button if you're new here. Hit the notification bell to know when we go live. Obviously, we got a ton of weather that could possibly impact tonight's slate. That's why you tune in later today. 5 p.m. Eastern is Grinders Live. They'll take a look at a more detailed view of the slate. We're here at 11 in the morning. It's kind of a first look. Then following Grinders Live is Crunch Time, hosted by Kevin Roth, our chief meteorologist. He'll have the radar. He'll have all the weather forecast, the updated stuff. You can always go to RotoGrinders.com and get our free weather report. Kevin Roth does update that 2 or 3 times a day. But if you want the late breaking news, you got to tune into Crunch Time. So that'll be later today, about 6:15 or so on YouTube. Join with me typically for a slow Thursday. It's the proprietor of Chiefs Prop Shop in our Discord, rotogrinders.com/Discord. Go join it today for free. It's Will Priester, Chief Justice. So yeah, a lot of weather. You said before the show, this is probably a light day. This is a light day for me. It's a light day for you. 5 games. They may not even, we have problems in Cleveland and Detroit, maybe Atlanta, maybe Chicago. But for all intents and purposes of this show at 11 in the morning, we're going to act like all these games play. Obviously, if you're doing pick 'em and props, if it doesn't play, it's no big deal. Maybe not for pick 6. That's an issue also.
Pick 6, you better be ready because if the game doesn't play, then thank you for paying the rate. I appreciate it.
Does that happen a lot? Because remember, I have not gotten pick 6 yet here in Kentucky, and I'm waiting. Just give it to me. I will be playing it if you just give it to me. Give it to me.
Yeah.
But do you find that in the pick 6 streets because you're actually able to play that stuff? That you get a lot of these cards that people put in that end up with some scratch play. Like even if it's not like a late scratch. We had an issue I remember a week or so ago with like Chris Sale being like the chalk on a slate, and then he was they changed that up. But you had time to swap that out. How much dead money is there on like cards that can't possibly get 6 picks because there's a team there?
It's far few and in between, but I will say, and this isn't really the case, but NBA Summer League where there wasn't as much news, news wasn't prevalent. You couldn't get your hands on it as quickly. Maybe it came out after the game started. That one was pretty interesting. And so you had a fair amount of people, Blender, that dead cards right out of the gate, just dead, because you didn't have enough news to go on. But generally speaking, MLB, if you get it enough time, you're not going to see it too much. Where it can hurt you, I will say more is the smaller slate. So not like what we consider a full slate, but like one of the late night slates or something like that. And people have put some stuff in, but they've kind of gone to sleep. It doesn't start until 10 o'clock, and you've got 2 games, and maybe they just they're just not aware of what's happening. That can usually happen for those slates, but generally speaking, you're not going to have too much of an edge. What we found in the prop shop, this is just for pick 6 in general, the smaller the slate, the higher the payouts have been, because you don't have as many outcomes and options. The range of outcomes is much smaller for 3 games than 8 games, and you have less choices. And then what I think pick 6 has done, Blender, which me and a friend of mine were talking about it. We feel like they've kind of alleviated a lot of the pitching props and have given you more hitting props, which essentially helps the game. Helps the game. The more pitching props you have, typically people can get more of those right. The hitting props aren't as easy, if you will, because there's it's a lot more variance there. It's variance in baseball in general, but variance there. So they've gotten rid of pitching fantasy points. They don't really have a huge board for pitching anymore, but they have a ton of hitting props. And so we've kind of seen the payouts Blender consistently be in the 40 to 50x range daily. Not every day, but like, 3 or 4 times a week now, you're seeing some of the bigger payouts versus earlier in the season, Blender, we were consistently seeing 9x, 12x on 6 picks because there were so many pitching props that you can get your hands on. That would be a benefit for you. So I know I kind of went all around the world explaining that, but I did think it was important for the context of the question.
Well, if you want to ask more pick 6 questions for Will, join Chiefs Prop Shop, the channel in our Discord, rotogrinders.com/Discord. Join it for free today. Obviously, if you want all of our tools here, like Lineup HQ, SimLabs, we now have SimLabs available on your phone. Now, you could have done it in your browser, but it was a little kind of a lot of information on one little web screen.
That was big news this week.
Yeah, SimLabs app. So you can download that on the App Store on iOS. I'm not sure for Android. I know I tested it for iOS, and it does work just like it does on desktop. There's some UI changes, but for all intents and purposes, if you want to take a look at the updated, especially when it's closer to lock, the updated sim output based on our RotoGrinders projections. If you're a premium member, remember, you need to be a premium member. Click on that link in the description. Get $40 off your first month. But yeah, it's available now in the App Store. Download it. Lineup HQ is available on the App Store. If you just want the native apps, you can do this very quickly on your phone. So let's go to today's slate. It's going to be a short show today. There's only 5 games. We're acting as if all of them are in play. Pitching, assuming all the games play. I mean, the key is all the games play. I don't think pitching is that clear cut. I think there's like halves. I think it's haves and haves-nots type of slate. We got Charlie Morton, 8,800 against Miami. We got Seth Lugo, 9,400 against Detroit. Shota Imanaga, 9,600 against St. Louis. On the other side of that game, we got Sonny Gray, 9,800 against the Cubs. Is out of these 4 pitchers, because these are the 4 most expensive pitchers on the slate. They're the 4 best pitchers on the slate. They're the 4 best projected pitchers on the slate. The difference between these 4 pitchers in the Bat X projections is like 1.5, if that. Morton being the highest out of the bunch because of his pitch count, as well as they're facing the really bad Miami Marlins now. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on these 4 pitchers, and how would you rank
them? I'd probably rate them.
And this is not adjusted for ownership. So like, just if you didn't care about ownership, because I think for the most part, I think they're all going to be around the same type, somewhere between 25 to 35% owned. I'm not sure if there's going to be a standout one. So I'm not even sure if like adjusted for ownership, it's going to matter that much either. But I just wanted to make it a point for the audience that this is, how would you rank them 1 to 4, being that they project pretty similarly to each other?
I think for me, it would be Shota, Morton, Gray, Lugo.
Do you rank Lugo last because I'm not a big Seth Lugo guy. Typically, I have Lugo unders, but he's not been bad this year. He's actually been pretty good. We've seen some 6K, 10K, 8K, 8K. I mean, he does have strikeout upside. The thing is that when he's bad, he's like really bad. Like bad. Like,
and that's kind of my. So even though Lugo has had some upside this season, like he's still a 21% K guy on the year. So if I'm going personal, no matchup Blender. So like take away the matchup, take away the projections, I'm always going to side with what I feel like is a combination of strikeout upside and skill. And so for me, and then I'm kind of going to add the matchup in on the back end. So I'm going with Shota because I feel like he has strikeout upside, and his pitch count is higher than Gray. So Gray and Shota have the highest strikeout percentages on the season, but Shota has a longer leash, in my opinion, than Sonny Gray. And then, but then leash is king to me with the matchup of Morton versus Miami. You get what I'm saying? Morton. So that's why it's like Shota, Morton, then Gray, then Lugo. While Lugo has the leash, Lugo's still only a 21% K guy. And like you said, Blender, if he only gets now, look, does he have probably on today's slate maybe a likely outcome to a fairly clean game, 5 or 6 strikeouts? Absolutely. But I still think Gray and Shota have way more raw strikeout upside than he does, like generally speaking.
Right. The ding on Sonny Gray is that he typically doesn't pitch 100 pitches.
And that's why he's not in the top. That's why he's third. Yep. That's why he's third.
Right. The only thing plus you could say about Lugo is that this Tigers lineup now, I mean, if we take a look at it, I mean, doesn't look all that good. I mean, when Jake Rogers, who has like a 1,000,000% strikeout rate, is batting 7th, I mean, Ryan Valade, I don't even know who that even is. I mean, this Urshela has a high strike. I mean, a lot of these guys, this is a strikeout heavy lineup. I mean, it was a high strikeout lineup beforehand, but now it's even more so. We may see the wind blowing in this game, obviously, if it plays. I mean, all these games are like yellow orange, so like there's weather risk everywhere. From a matchup perspective, I mean, to me, Morton and Lugo have the best matchups on the board. But I would agree with you. Just from a raw talent perspective, like Shota and Gray are just better pitchers. It's just that the Cubs and the Cardinals aren't like the worst. You know, they're not the best offenses, but they're not bad offenses.
Yeah, and Shota gets a little leg up being a lefty. You know, St. Louis does strike out a little bit more than lefties than righties. Like if he was a righty, I may have actually ranked Morton ahead of him today. But there's a couple. He gets the benefit of the doubt with a few extra strikeouts for lefties versus righties. So, like for instance, Blender, you know, just like surface level stuff here, just in terms of K rates. Like Mason wins at 22, Contreras is at 24, Pham's at 22, you know, Ciani's at 30. And then, like, if you look at them against righties, then you see like Wynn at 16, Contreras is still at 29, and Goldschmidt's at 31. But like overall, I think he's just got a slight leg up here. So. And he's got a 24% K rate on the season, 27% over the last, you know, month or so. But at any rate, that's kind of that's where we are. And I think his raw skills and his leash, I think he's a little bit better today if the game goes.
Well, let's talk about cheap nonsense. That's a term that Dave Potts, Cheese is good, that always terms in his $1 Million Musings article that comes out every weekday. He writes like 10,000 words, like every day. This is for RotoGrinders premium members. So Dave Potts is in the fantasy Hall of Fame, 2-time Millie winner, right? You got to get his opinions on everything. That's for premium members. Click on that link in the description. You know, get $40 off your first month. Come on, join. NFL's coming up. You get everything with it. So you get NFL, MMA, PGA, the preseason NFL. We got the Hall of Fame game. Right, if you're playing Hall of Fame Showdown today, you might as well get that also. But
I've got some props in for that Hall of Fame game also. But I explained to the prop shop in bold letters, please do not play normal units. I'm only at like a quarter of a unit on this thing. It's kind of for fun, just to get some action in, entertainment, and then maybe we make a little money along the way. So this is I put one card in Blender based off of, you know, what our team at RG is saying about playing time, so forth and so on. Put it in. If it comes to fruition, Blender, great. If not, entertainment value.
Well, you're gonna need some entertainment value when the over/under on the game is 30.5. Right?
Yeah, for sure.
So let's talk about cheap nonsense, Will. Is the cheap nonsense that's playable on this slate? And it's not that cheap. I mean, you got Ryan Feltner at 6K. Basically, the pitchers in the Rockies-Angels game, Ryan Feltner at 6K, Carson Fulmer at 7,300. Although I'm not sure if Carson Fulmer is going to pitch more than 70, 75 pitches. 70, 75 pitches against the Rockies away from Coors is not bad for 7,300. And I mean, the Angels are Ryan Feltner ain't my cup of tea, but I mean, he's shown strikeout upside. I mean, 6, 6, 7, 6 in the past 4 games. I mean, he does have some 3s and 2. I mean, when he's bad, he's bad.
Okay, so Blender, but let's talk about this like real quick. So see, because here's where sometimes it's like you just kind of have to lean into some I don't want to call it uncertainty, some variance, if you will. Let's call it variance for the sake of the show, Blender. Ryan Feltner has a 20% K rate on the season. Lugo only has a 21% K rate. Now, obviously, skills influence how well a pitcher's going to pitch. Also, like it's not just their K rate, but that's what I'm saying with Lugo, Blender. I'm saying that to say the cheap nonsense I think is Feltner for me, and that's probably it. At 6K.
So I mean, the point that you're making with Lugo and Feltner's strikeout rate is that you're getting a similar strikeout rate at 6K that you are at 9,400 against Detroit.
And he's got a similar matchup. Like the Angels aren't some juggernaut offense that we're afraid of.
And obviously you could fit in an extra big bat into your lineup. I'm not actually really even sure. This time of the season, we get these like 2,000, 3K guys in like every lineup that it's easy to make 5-man stacks that are reasonably affordable. You may not be able to play 5 of the best players from the team. So I'm not sure if price is going to come in that much into the case. That's why I think Feltner's ownership is going to be a little suppressed. Because I think it's going to be fairly easy to get in 2 of Morton, Lugo, Imanaga, and Gray. But obviously, the main factor in all this type of ownership stuff is what games play and what games don't, right? If we see that Cubs-Cardinals game, PPD, like, you know how much ownership is going to go to Lugo and Morton because it like knocks out 2 of the best pitchers on the slate, and all that ownership is going to go to the 2 next best pitchers. Then Brian Feltner's ownership goes up a bunch. But then, like, if you knock off, let's say, the Detroit game, like Lugo's ownership has to go somewhere, and next thing you know, you see Charlie Morton with an outsized ownership. So really pay attention to that as we get closer to lock. Tune into crunch time. Let Kevin Roth give you the weather updates. What's going to play? What's not going to play? Especially when the only game that like does not have a designation is the late game. Right, so the Colorado and the Rockies Angels game is at 9:30. It's the latest game on the slate. You may not have to worry about the weather in there. Everything else is 6:40, 6:40, 7:20, 8:05. So Ross should have a good update at 6 p.m. Eastern and 5:45 p.m. and we may have a little even earlier crunch time start today. So let's talk about stacks now. We only got 10 of them if all the games play. Obviously, on a small slate, like every stack is viable, right? I'm not sure if we're going to get an F. I'm not sure if there are any F stacks on the slate. Well, we'll see. We'll take a look. But much more viable. 5-man stacks. This is what the tiers are. Ownership adjusted. Okay, if something's low, doesn't mean you can't play a bat from a team. Just we're ranking 5-man stacks on DraftKings, ownership adjusted. The top 2 teams on the slate, according to the BatX projections, but not all by, I think it's a have and have-nots type of thing. The difference between the top projected team and the bottom projected team is only 8 fantasy points. So that's not that like dramatic of a difference. The top 2 in the halves are the Orioles against Ben Lively and the Guardians against Trevor Rogers and the newly acquired Trevor Rogers. Where are you putting, Will, the Orioles and the Guardians on the slate? I believe the Orioles may be the most owned team on the slate, but I'm not sure if there's like one. I don't think there's one like super owned stack. I think the Orioles, the Guardians, and the Royals are the 3 most owned teams. but they may be owned fairly similar. Like if the Orioles are like 14%, the Guardians are 12, and the Royals are 11. It's not going to be one of these types of things where one team is 23% owned and the other two are like 10. So where are we putting the Orioles, the Guardians, and the Royals?
Let me just say, I do think the Braves are coming in.
Yeah, I would say I agree. I was going to get to the Braves. I think the Braves
Yeah.
are like right underneath these.
Yeah.
So let's do all four. I think these are the halves, right? And the halves versus halves.
Yeah.
So we'll add Braves versus Max Meyer. So we're putting the Orioles, the Guardians, the Braves, and the Royals. We need to put let's make we need to put at least one team. We need to put one team in the F and one team in the A, even though it's a lot of it is similar, but just so people don't accuse us of like just throwing everything in the middle and just saying good luck, right?
Yeah.
So you have to put one of these teams, ownership adjusted, price adjusted, everything. The Orioles, the Guardians, the Braves, the Royals. Which one is the A tier team?
Ownership adjusted. Ironically, I think the A tier has got to be the Orioles. Here's why I'm saying it. From what I'm looking at right now, they've got ownership seemingly more spread out with their lineup because most of their pieces now are getting a little bit more expensive. So I feel like that's kind of where the field is going to be headed. Like if you look at their lineup, Blender, outside of like the bottom 7, everybody else is above 4K. Kyle's is 4K now. Rutschman's 56, Henderson 63, Santander 53. Santander has absolutely earned that price tag based on his performance. But I think the Orioles make the A tier, and I think the Guardians make the F tier. They're going to be. I'm saying if we're saying let's put one in ownership adjusted, they have to make it.
No, I mean I'm not going to put any of these teams in the F tier, but
okay, I got you. Never mind.
One of the 10 teams, right? Not one of these 4 teams.
Understood.
But
understood.
The next question I was going to say, Will, is that we defaulted these teams in the B tier, right? And like, okay, one of them has to go in the A tier. Now, one of them has to go in the C tier because they're going to be over-owned in relation to the four teams' ownership. I think I'm with you that I was going to put the Guardians in the drop them a tier C because although Trevor Rogers, when he's bad, he's really bad. I'm not Cleveland as a stack just doesn't get there enough for me.
And he's still going to face a fair share of lefties today also.
Right.
Like he's going to face enough to like put up some strikeouts.
He may give up 7 runs while striking out a bunch, but or walk 5 or whatever. But this is a little bit better matchup for Trevor Rogers than maybe some other lineups. But Trevor Rogers still is hashtag bad. So the Guardians, only because they're going to be I think they're going to be a bit over-owned. They get moved down to the C tier. So let's take a look at the middle of the pack. And there's not much of a middle of the pack. I think next in the Bat X, we have both teams in that Angels-Rockies game. We talked about the pitching, Feltner and Fulmer. The Angels are still fairly affordable. The Rockies are weirdly kind of a little pricey for what they are. I personally would put the Angels in the C tier, only because I think as cheap nonsense, Feltner is going to get enough ownership in lineups that spend up on bats that I think it offers enough. I would default the Angels to D and then bump them up due to leverage.
Yeah.
And then I don't think Carson Fulmer is going to be owned enough that, that the Rockies move anywhere. But I'm not afraid of a matchup against Carson Fulmer. So that's why I'm putting him in the D tier.
Yeah, for sure. Right now, we've got Feltner and Fulmer like close enough in ownership, like by virtually 1%. But I do think Feltner picks up more steam as we. I mean, that $1,300 discount is a big deal if you're trying to get in one of these big bats.
Okay, let's go to the bottom 4. So the bottom 4 are essentially the teams against the 4 pitchers that we mentioned. And remember, we're acting as if all these games play. right? The weather forecast, yellow, orange, Roth has warnings. Could play, not play. When's the rain coming? Are they going to play through light rain? We have no idea. So we got the Marlins. We're going to default these to the F tier, right? So Marlins, the Cubs, right? Cubs, Cardinals, and Tigers. So where's the Cardinals? Where are Cardinals and Tigers? Well, actually, we're going to default them to the D tier, right? Because remember, we're just going to put one team in the F tier, right? So all these teams, they project the lowest, but not like absurdly. I mean, the difference between the Orioles and these teams on a 5-man stack basis on average is like 6 less points, which is low, but not like dramatically dramatic. We have slates where the difference between the top and the bottom is like 16 fantasy points. Okay. So you have the Marlins against Morton, the Cubs against Gray, the Cardinals against Shota Imanaga, Tigers against Lugo. Assuming all these pitchers get ownership, right? The stack in large field is worth playing, right? Because there's going to be 30% ownership with the pitcher. But out of all these 4 teams, Will, which one are you the least likely to play due to projection and ownership? Because we got to put one of them in the F tier.
So this is an interesting slate for me because, and I'm gonna explain it, then I'll make my ranking. Because I think any of these cheat teams today are viable. Because of the slate, like any of them are okay. If there's one team that I think I feel like maybe doesn't make it, it's
tough. I know it's tough, Will, because the Marlins and the Tigers are actually really cheap, right? Like you could stack 5 of these guys, 5 guys from either of these teams, and then play like Bobby Witt, Jose Ramirez, and Gunnar Henderson. Like you could do that type of lineup. So I see the value in the Marlins, and I don't mind. Look, the Marlins and the Tigers are facing Morton, who at times he could give up 12 hits in a game. And Seth Lugo, we already talked about, 21% strikeout rate. Like the Tigers at least have some power, even though their strikeout rate is high. So I almost feel like the Marlins and the Tigers are de facto D teams. And it's one of these 2 teams against Gray or Shota, the Cubs and the Cardinals, who I'd rather not play because they're about the same price as like all these other teams and against probably the 2 best pitchers on the slate. So to me, it's a toss-up between the Cubs and the Cardinals. Who are you least likely to attack, Sonny Gray or Shota Imanaga?
I mean, probably Shota because of the leash. So I guess we're going St. Louis in the F tier.
Well, that doesn't mean you can't play a a one-off. I mean, we're like we said in the very beginning, like if we actually rank these teams based on tiers, we'd probably put the Orioles here and the Cardinals there, and then I have a board where like everything's in the middle. But that's people don't want that. Imagine we put all these in the C tier and just like said goodbye, hit the like button, and we're out of here. So it's like, okay, what team are you going to play? So like to me, I would agree with you. I don't even think I'm going to like if all these games play. I don't think I'm going to play a Cubs lineup. I mean, on this slate, I think I may only play one lineup. Like it's a short slate.
That's what I'm planning to do. I'm single entry all day today. Like. Nothing crazy. And to me, on slates like this, Blender, especially when I'm not going to multi-entry, I call these like my lightning in a bottle slates. I play single entry and maybe Blender, so maybe I can squeeze out at most, 8 to 10K on this slate, like by winning some single entry stuff. But like this is the slate where I'm trying to hit 100K. You know what I mean?
Mm. But you're probably trying to do decently on props. I mean, there aren't that much.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there aren't that I've only got 4 props in today. I've only got 4 props in.
Okay.
Only 4, that's it.
So what 4 props do you got for the RG today?
I got them early, so I took actually
right. Don't worry about tell what you got and what the price is and let other people, they get a slightly worse price. That's one thing. Remember, my big thing is get the best number, get the best price. But just because Will got, something at plus 125 and now it's at plus 110 doesn't mean that there still isn't value, but there's obviously much more value getting them early using the RotoGrinders projections or the BatX projections that you could get here if you're a premium member and get it early. Remember my rule when it comes to the bat. Wake up before Cardi, right? If you wake up before Cardi, you get the better numbers, right? That's just an immutable fact. So that's typically what Will does, is he gets up before Cardi and gets the numbers before they move. So what 4 props do you got today on MLB?
So on Underdog, I did get, so this one I got.
Okay, so this is pick'em. I mean, obviously you're in a state that doesn't have sports betting technically yet or whatever. So this is all pick'em stuff.
Yeah, giving that one first. So I did get Lugo and I got Morton both, if I'm not mistaken, around 30.5 fantasy points. And if you check the projections, I think Lugo was projected for like 33.5. Morton was, I think, projected for around 32.5-ish, something like that. Blender, when I got them in, now they may have moved because I haven't looked at them yet. But and let me check, because I do see that Lugo's probably bumped some since I put them in. So I'm checking now to see. But I got those two, and then I also took Shota. So here's the thing, but remember we've talked about this. Sometimes I have to wait. So Shota is 5.5 on the sports books, but he's 5 on the pick'em sites. So I got a little touch of value there. So I took Shota at more than 5 strikeouts. Lugo is now at 31.5 fantasy points. And Morton is now at 31.5 fantasy points also. And I got both of them at 30.5. And then I said, well, I like the Sonny Gray strikeout prop more than his fantasy points prop today. And the reason why with Gray, Blender, I've just seen him get 7 strikeouts in like 5 innings and give up 3 runs, and he hits the strikeout prop and doesn't make the fantasy point prop. So I took him at 6, and then for today only, Blender, what I did, usually I play 5 picks or 6 picks, but today I didn't like the board really. So I played a 4 pick, but I played basically a power version of that today, because if one of the strikeout props push and I'm on any type of a flex, I'm really cutting that payout down, and I'm paying way worse per leg. So I went with the power today, and that way, if anything happens, I'm getting the best odds per leg with that particular card. So that's why I got 4 picks, did a power, and if they all win, I get 10x. If one pushes and the other one win, I get 6x, which is like a 3-pick, which is something else that we typically play on Underdog. So that's what I have for today, Blender. That's all I'm putting in. I'm not doing anything extra. Tomorrow we'll have thousands of props available, and I'll be back to normal.
Right, and on my front with the bat, people like the home run props. This is what I got. Basically the Tigers-Royals game. So we mentioned before about the Tigers against Lugo. They do have power, even though they strike out a bunch. So I mean, these are remember, home run props are supposed to be, these are long shot type of plays, right? These are things that you're not supposed to put a ton of money on, and you're supposed to play throughout the course of the season and be up, and you have a 10%, 12% ROI over the course of an entire season. But you got Colt Keith plus 1,100, Jake Rogers plus 850, Justin Henry Malloy plus 800, and Matt Vierling plus 870. The first 3 are available on BetMGM, and the last one, the Vierling one, is available on FanDuel. So put a little sprinkle on that. So according to the BatX, based on those prices, the Tigers, home runs, the Vierling, Keith, Malloy, and Rogers. Obviously, if you're getting plus 500, plus 400, you never take these, right? So just understand that it's all based on the price. The bat isn't predicting the Tigers to hit 4 home runs today, just that Colt Keith has a better than 11-1 shot of hitting a home run. It's more like 8.5 to 1 rather than 11 to 1, right? That Justin Henry Malloy is 8 to 1, and it should be like 6.2 to 1, right? Those are the edges in these types of products. Now, we're not predicting, right? It's easy for me to go and say, Yeah, Bobby Witt hit a home run. I mean, like it's easy. Aaron Judge hit a home. Yeah, but the pricing is typically awful, right? You're not going to bet Aaron Judge is plus 175 to hit a home run because he's probably more like a 2.5 to 1 to hit a home run, and you're getting paid 1 3/4.
Yeah.
So remember, it's not about probability; it's about profitability.
Blender, great statement. That's how I like to live my life, man. Profitability is the key.
I just engage in things that are profitable long term and see the money. You see that line that your graph go up slowly over time, and then by the end of the season, you're just like, oh, okay, I made X amount. Like the peaks and valleys from a mental standpoint, sometimes it's hard to live through. You know what I do, Will? This is how I deal with variance. Okay. I at least it works for me, right? Because I've been playing poker a lot more recently, and poker has similar swings, right? Nowhere near as much as DFS, right? Nowhere near as much. Probably about similar, maybe to sports betting. So there are times you go on downswings, right? Maybe you go on a downswing in the middle of a month. You have a really bad week, right? But at the end of the month, you see that like, oh, you're up $2,500, right? At the end of the month, like the month before, you made like $4,000 or whatever, but this month you made 2,500. But during the point of making 2,500, you were down 1,000 at one point, right? And during that period, you're like, oh my God, I'm down at that whatever, And by the end of the month or whatever period you want to just segment out, you're like, okay, it was lower than expected, but okay. But then you just think to yourself, at the start of this month, if I would have said, hey, I wake up at the end of the month and I'm up 2,500, am I cool with that? I'd be like, yeah, that's not bad, right? Yeah. It's like, okay, so that gap in the middle where it was a downswing and everything like that, it's like the path to get there doesn't matter. It's one long game. And now, obviously, if you're playing DFS GPPs, those downswings could be ridiculous. I mean, because you're looking for these 100K, 50K, 25K spikes. So a lot of times, like, it'll be an NBA season where it's like, this is in the past where, 2 months of losing, right? And then you win some and whatever. And then at the end of the season, you're like, I was up 22,000. And it's like, if you told me at the start of the NBA season that I'd be up 22,000 on the season, would I be fine with that? I'd be like, okay, that's pretty good. Okay. Right.
And Blender,
once you see the longer picture, like it's much easier to handle. And then so you don't do anything rash where you go on a 1 week, 2 week downswing and you're like, what do I have to change and everything? It's like, if you have a large enough sample size, all you're doing is dealing with the negative side of variance. I mean, it should long term, if you're doing this well, you should be winning long term anyway. And there always are going to be gaps like that.
Yeah, and here's the thing, Blender. Here's something a statement I use. Now I pull this in from my financial background, but it's 1,000% applicable to what we do. And what we used to say is, when in doubt, zoom out. Right? Mm-hmm. So what happens is, the financial industry, if an investor goes through a week of, the NASDAQ being down or the, S&P is down, and they're like, oh my gosh, like I lost $30,000 this week, as an example, Blender. We say, well, hold on. Let's look big picture here. Yes, you did lose 30,000 this week, but over the course of your 12 years of investing, you've made 700,000. What? So don't you've rode this wave before. You've gone through this type of storm throughout your whole investing career, but this 1 week is making you feel bad. And so, here's the thing. The same thing, like when I look at, what I've done over the course of the week or over the course of a month, like last month, I went through one of those rough stretches last month, Blender. And so I kind of had to do the same thing. I said, well, wait a minute. I said, yeah, so this week is big. So my rough week, Blender, was like the 14th through the 20th of last month. That was like my rough week. But then I zoomed out. I said, well, at the end of the month, Blender, I still made $3,430.39. Like that was my profit for the month. I said, well, hey, you know what? Month was fine. It's just I had that one weird week. But over the course of the month, everything worked out. So I and that's not to just tell people what, I'm not trying to brag about income because some people make 40,000. It's about like as bad as I thought my month was in the middle, by the end of the month, I still made, did pretty well. And and then they'll this month Blender,
from a big picture to
20K.
zoom out, if you put it in the financial sense, if you invested in 2018 into just index funds or whatever, and just put it in 2018, you just put in money, and then you went to sleep, right? And you woke up today, your return on that money is immense. Of course, you also slept through COVID where the entire market crashed and then came back up over the course of a year. But look, imagine you were awake for that. You'd be freaking out and everything like that. And then, but at the end, and 6 years later, I have enough money to retire. It's the same thing that exists in DFS, in sports betting, in any advantage endeavor. If you're playing well and you're profitable long term, you're playing in a plus EV manner, you can't get away from variance. But the way that you react, focus on the things that you can control, right? You can't control the games. You can't control, this line came off the board. Oh, this game got rained out. That type of thing. Focus on what you can do. And if you have a track record, I've been playing DFS for it's coming on 9 years now. And then
long time. We've been in this thing a long time.
Yeah, long time. 4 years on pick'em and props. I got the receipts to prove that I play this game profitably. There are going to be points in time where, that line goes down and then spikes up, and the line goes down and it spikes up. And I'm telling you, even from an experienced person, there are times where I'm like, do I have an edge anymore? Is it over? Right? You're going to get to the point where you're downswing and the period in between wins or whatever gets to that extent. And then right around the corner, it's like, oh yeah, okay. I get one big GPP win a year, maybe two if I'm lucky. And that makes up for everything. And it's like clockwork. I just don't know when they're going to happen. Right?
Yeah.
Sometimes one big one covers enough for 2 years. And I'm just just got to keep on trucking along and wait for variance to go my way.
Yep. And that's how I feel too, Blender. Look, and I tell everybody this, I will chase the millie in spurts throughout the year, especially for football. But part of that is it's about the money, but it's also about the prestige and the feather in the cap. And so I'm bringing that up, Blender, to say, I feel like sometimes people get into the industry and they don't really have a plan, or they don't know their why. Why are you doing this? Is it for, secondary income? Is it for fun? Is it because, depending on why you're doing it, can kind of give you some perspective. You know what I mean? And so another thing that I want to do is I still want to win a live final. Now, I don't chase that as much. I do chase it here and there. Back in the day, I played almost every day until I got my seat. And then I would, and I'm a one seat guy. Once I get it, I'm not putting any more money into the live final stuff. But, kind of know your why. Because I do think there's a mental side of DFS, Blender, in terms of how do you play? So for instance, in your case, I know Blender's going to wake up in the morning. He's going to pull up the bat. He's going to say, okay, I'm playing this, the best price, this, that, and you're going to leave it. And so if you go through 5 days of negative ROI, then on that 6th day, I know you don't do this, but I'm saying on that 6th day, if you wake up and suddenly you say, well, I'm going to do this differently today. I'm just going to pick what I like and go from there. As an example, and I know you don't do this, but now what you're doing is you're being reactive to the downswing rather than staying consistent in what has worked. And so, I want to tell people that that's the mental part. You have to fight the urge to do something crazy when you know what you're doing is working. You have to know you're not going to win every day. And when you understand that, you actually become a much better player, understanding that I could lose 5 days, but on the 6th day, I could hit everything. That's a part of the game.
When in doubt, zoom out.
Zoom out. Yes.
So when in doubt, hit that thumbs up button on your way out the door, right? We got free content here, right? Hit the thumbs up button, hit the subscribe button if you're new here, hit the notification bell to know when we go live. We got Grinders Live later today, 5 p.m. Eastern. Immediately following that is Crunch Time. It's going to be a very important Crunch Time today, people. So you got to check it out. Kevin Roth will be on, making sure you get all the updates with the weather. Does the game play? Does the game not play? Is it going to be a late start? What to expect? Roth a lot of times is able to say, it's like, okay, it's going to get a delay, but if they late start this, they're fine, right? Sometimes it's the opposite. Sometimes if they don't play through this light rain, this game is going to get washed out by 9 o'clock. So if they start on time, I think you're good. But if they don't, you're kind of screwed, right?
Yeah.
You want to get all those updates on Crunch Time. So tune into that later. Thanks, Will. You can follow Will at Chief Justice 06 on Twitter. Join Chief's Prop Shop in our Discord. It's free. RotoGrinders.com/Discord. I'll be on tomorrow to talk about the UFC Abu Dhabi card. A little bit earlier slate on Saturday. So I believe Squirrel Patrol or someone may be on. I think Squirrel Patrol's on vacation in August for a couple of weeks, so maybe he's not on. Someone will be on with me tomorrow to preview that. So tune in then. Tune in every weekday because I'm always here Monday through Friday, 11 o'clock Eastern, talking about all things you're thinking about in daily fantasy, props, and pick'em on RotoGrinders Today.